I wanted to leave the White House. It's been 12 years, you know. You do something so long, you just do it by rote and you lose your edge. So he called me one day in, I guess, October of '88, and he said, what would you think about doing a program with Diane Sawyer? Well, Diane Sawyer worked for CBS. I said, well, that'd be terrific, but I want to stay at ABC. No, he said, you mustn't tell a soul. But I've been talking to Diane for some time now. I think there's a pretty good chance that I can get her to come over here. Well, I said, Ruin, that'd be wonderful and all that. Time passed and got to be January, and then he calls me up for real. He says, I think she's going to come. I think she's going to come. Would you have drinks with her tonight? I said, sure. So Diana went up and we just batted our eyes at each other and said how wonderful it'd be if we could work together. And boy, you know, heaven was singing and the larks on the wing and all of that. And Roon got her to come over to ABC. And CBS and Paley, Bill Paley, the founder of CBS, was still alive, was in anguish, but it didn't matter. But because of being paired with Diane, once again, we have a nice house in the Washington area. I call it the house that Roon built. There's a book by that name by a very fine reporter. But forget that side of it. The opportunity. I was so bad to begin with on Primetime Live. It was a magazine show. To me, the lead is the lead. It's your first sentence. President Carter today announced, Ronald Reagan today signed, Ronald Reagan said, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. In a magazine piece, the lead may be at the end or in the middle. You in to start, they cry, they die, they, you know. I don't know, but I just was kind of a basket kid. Diane knew how to do it. She'd come from 60 Minutes. Chris Wallace was pretty good. And we started out. We started out in New York. Roon wanted a big audience because he'd always wanted to do, when he was growing up, the show that to him was television. It was Ed Sullivan, Toast of the Town, which became the Ed Sullivan Show. Big audience. In our audience tonight, here's the champion of the world, ex-champion, Joe Louis, take a bow. He wanted to do that. He tried it with Howard Cosell, called Saturday Night with Howard Cosell. It didn't work. He was going to try it with us. We had a big bid wall. We could interview people. The secretary, James Baker, was on our first Secretary of State. What do you think about the hostage crisis? And we weren't doing very good. It just wasn't, you know. I mean, we bounced along. We had our moments. One of our great moments, I thought, Roon thought, Diane thought. We were on Thursday night. One afternoon, we're sitting around about 2:30. What are we going to do tonight? We have an hour of television. It's experiment. What? The Berlin Wall. It's come down. Not only figuratively, but literally. They're opening it up. The fall of the Berlin Wall in my lifetime was one of those seminal political events that you just cannot imagine today. So boy, did we go into high gear, and we had cameras at the wall and interviews there. And I called on my old friend Ronald Reagan to come into his office at Century City in Los Angeles to do live interview. And we did the program, and Mr. Reagan, President Reagan, you said Gorbachev, yes, I thought the wall and all of that. And when we were through, we just were so happy. And we went to some place to have a drink afterward near ABC in New York. And Roon came walking in unannounced. And if you knew Roon, he'd let his driver go earlier in the evening. He took a cab for Roon Arledge to take a taxi. I mean, he walked in, he said, this, you guys have made it. You've turned it around. This is it. This is what ABC News is all about. This is wonderful. Yeah, I mean, we drank. The next morning, I'd stayed in New York, of course, overnight. I came walking, you know, talk about a jaunty step. We got in there and discovered we had about 11 share. I mean, no one was watching our special. The phone rings, it's Roon. Talks to our executive producer. You know, I'm thinking about it. I couldn't understand some of those people from the wall. And that interview with Reagan, it was fine, except it went 2 or 3 minutes too long. I mean, Roon suddenly discovered, hey, that show wasn't that great after all. I don't blame him in a sense. Presidents don't admit mistakes, do they? Oh, well, that's a political comment. I shouldn't make it. In any event, we kept on. And finally, after about 8 or 9 months, we had a meeting one night after the show. Roon and Rick Kaplan, our executive producer, and Diane and me. And we all said, it's not working, and if we can't get it working soon, we got to stop it. There's no sense killing ourselves for low ratings. So I suggested, why don't I go back to Washington? That's my hometown. I mean, with all due respect to you New Yorkers, I once was up here and you paid no attention to me whatsoever, and I've hated you ever since. With all respect, I'm Washington. People, if they know me at all, they know me as Washington. Everyone thought it was a good idea. And I came back here and it began to work. I began to learn how to do magazine pieces. Diane had her own space. Boy, do I give a great big gold star to both her and Charlie Gibson. Charlie and Diane are wonderful. But Charlie's the only man in this business so far, given what happened to her at CBS and with my experience, where sitting with her, I mean, she needs her own space, and she had it. And I had my own space. And so for the next 3 or 3.5 years, until some little program called ER came along, we were #1.